The town of St. Thaddeus wasn't the kind of place that ended up in the news. Nestled in a quiet valley, its biggest events were church bake sales and the annual science fair. But one morning, everything changed. It started with a glowing symbol. Margaret, a devout parishioner, was polishing the church's altar when she saw it. A faint, golden outline of what looked like a constellation etched into the stone wall. She screamed, and Father Michael rushed in, his heart pounding. As they stared at the symbol, it began to pulse, radiating warmth and light. Across town, Dr. Evelyn Hart, a physicist reluctantly back in her hometown after her mother's death, was sorting through dusty journals when she heard commotion outside. Neighbors were gathering in clusters, pointing at the church and whispering about a miracle. Evelyn sighed. "This town and its miracles," she muttered, rolling her eyes. The next day, more symbols appeared, on walls, trees, even the sides of cars. People began to report strange occurrences. A man's chronic arthritis disappeared overnight. A grieving mother claimed her dead daughter spoke to her in a dream. The town was alive with chatter, but not all of it was hopeful. Some spoke of curses, not blessings. At a town meeting hastily called by the mayor, the community split into factions. Margaret's voice rang out, "This is a sign from God, proof of his presence among us." But Raymond, a local skeptic, scoffed. Signs from God? More like a prank, or some weird chemical reaction. Father Michael stood silently, torn. His faith had been shaken for years, a secret he kept from his congregation. What if Margaret was right? Or worse, what if she wasn't, and he had no answers to offer? Evelyn sat at the back, arms crossed. She had no interest in being dragged into the town's hysteria, but as she leafed through one of her mother's old notebooks, her stomach dropped. Drawn on the pages were the same symbols now appearing across the town. Below them, her mother had written, "They're real, and they're under the church." The next morning, Evelyn marched to the church, the notebook clutched in her hand. She demanded answers, but Father Michael, already frazzled from the escalating chaos, bristled at her skepticism. "This isn't some science experiment, Doctor Hart," he said sharply. "These are matters of faith. And faith doesn't make things glow," she shot back. "Something is causing this, and it's not divine intervention." Their argument was interrupted by Elena, a mother holding her frail, pale child. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "If this is real, it might save my son." The tension was palpable. Michael looked at the boy, guilt flooding his heart. He couldn't turn her away, not again. Reluctantly, Michael and Evelyn agreed to investigate together. Their search led them to the church basement, a space filled with decades of forgotten relics. There, behind a crumbling wall, they found it. A pulsating, glowing machine humming with energy, its surface covered in the same symbols that now haunted the town. Evelyn stared in awe. This is technology, advanced technology. How is this even possible?" Michael crossed himself instinctively. Or it's a miracle. Their discovery set the stage for the town's greatest test. Was this machine a gift or a curse? And why did Evelyn's mother seem to know about it? As tensions in the town reached a boiling point, Evelyn and Michael realized they didn't just need to uncover the machine's secrets, they needed to save their town from being torn apart. The discovery of the glowing machine beneath the church sent shockwaves through St. Thaddeus. The news spread like wildfire, deepening the divide between believers and skeptics. Some saw it as divine intervention, while others whispered fears of alien technology or government experiments gone wrong. As Evelyn and Father Michael stood in the dim basement, bathed in the machine's eerie glow, the air felt charged with both wonder and dread. Evelyn's scientific curiosity burned brighter than ever. She began examining the symbols and the faintly humming circuits, her mind racing through possibilities. "This could be ancient tech, something buried here centuries ago," she mused aloud. Michael crossed his arms, his face etched with concern. "Or it's something we were never meant to touch. Look at what it's already doing to the town." Upstairs, the tension had spilled into the pews. Factions were forming. Margaret led the group of devout believers, insisting the machine was a gift from God. "It's proof," she declared to a gathering crowd. "Proof that we're chosen, that we're not alone." On the other side of the aisle, Raymond and the skeptics called for the machine's immediate removal. "We don't know what it is or what it's capable of," he shouted. "We're playing with fire." Evelyn and Michael were dragged into the center of the storm. While Michael was pressured to proclaim the machine a divine artifact, Evelyn was bombarded with demands to explain the phenomenon. Both felt the weight of the town's desperation, their roles as leaders in their respective fields thrust upon them. As days passed, the machine's influence grew. More symbols appeared, spreading far beyond the church, their golden glow marking homes, streets, and even people. Strange phenomena escalated. Long dead clocks began ticking. A blind woman claimed she saw fleeting visions, and Elena's sickly child, Peter, showed signs of recovery. Evelyn remained skeptical. "There's a logical explanation for this," she insisted to Michael as they worked side by side in the basement. "Electromagnetic interference, perhaps. Maybe it's releasing some kind of energy field." Michael wasn't so sure. Watching Peter laugh and play for the first time in months tugged at his heart. What if it's something more than science? What if it's a test of faith? He asked. Their investigations hit a breakthrough when Evelyn deciphered part of the symbols using her mother's journal. "These markings," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "They're coordinates to something buried deeper." The discovery reignited their search. They unearthed a hidden chamber below the machine, revealing what looked like a core, a radiant crystalline structure emitting pulses of energy that felt almost alive. Evelyn's hands hovered over it, awe-stricken. "This is unlike anything I've ever seen." Michael knelt instinctively, murmuring a prayer. "And you're sure it's not divine?" he whispered, his voice tinged with doubt. Before Evelyn could respond, the room shook violently. The machine surged with power, the symbols glowing brighter than ever. The pulse reverberated through the town, causing chaos. Windows shattered, lights flickered, and the air grew thick with an unnatural hum. In the church above, Margaret fell to her knees, weeping. "It's a sign of judgment." The pulse's aftermath left the town reeling. People grew paranoid, blaming each other for the escalating crisis. Families who had lived side by side for decades turned against one another. Some demanded the machine be destroyed. Others barricaded themselves in their homes, refusing to leave its proximity. Even Michael and Evelyn weren't spared from the growing mistrust. Margaret accused Evelyn of meddling with God's will, while Raymond declared Michael a coward for not denouncing the machine outright. "You're letting this thing destroy us," he shouted during another heated town meeting. Under the strain, Evelyn and Michael found themselves at odds. "We need to shut this thing down," Evelyn insisted, after another violent surge left half the town without power. "And what if it's the only thing keeping Peter alive?" Michael countered, his voice cracking with emotion. Their argument was cut short when a group of townspeople stormed the church, demanding answers. Margaret and Raymond led the mob, their voices drowning out reason. Fearing for their safety, Evelyn and Michael retreated to the basement, their bond fracturing under the weight of their conflicting beliefs. As Evelyn worked frantically to understand the machine's purpose, it began displaying new behavior. The glowing symbols started rearranging themselves, forming patterns that resembled words or warnings. One night, while Evelyn studied the core, a burst of energy projected a hauntingly familiar image, her mother's face formed from light. "Evelyn," the projection said, its voice trembling with urgency. "It's not what you think. It needs to be stopped." Evelyn froze, her mind racing. Was this a glitch? A message from beyond? Or her own paranoia taking hold? Meanwhile, Michael, consumed by his own doubts, prayed fervently in the sanctuary above. For the first time in years, he spoke not just to God, but to himself. "Am I doing the right thing? Or am I just afraid to let go?" As the machine's influence reached a breaking point, Evelyn and Michael realized they couldn't delay any longer. Whatever the machine's true nature, they needed to act, together. But, with the town on the verge of collapse and their own trust in each other fraying, the path forward had never been less clear. The machine's pulsating energy dominated every corner of the town. Its golden symbols now glowed on nearly every building, weaving their mysterious web through St. Thaddeus. The once peaceful village had turned into a battleground of ideologies, with factions forming and chaos reigning. Evelyn and Father Michael found themselves at the center of it all, polarizing figures in a crisis spiraling out of control. In the aftermath of the machine's latest surge, the town was teetering on collapse. Mistrust and fear consumed the residents. Margaret's believers began guarding the church day and night, convinced the machine was a divine artifact that must be protected. Meanwhile, Raymond's skeptics, armed with tools and makeshift weapons, plotted to destroy it, seeing it as a growing threat. Tensions boiled over one evening when Raymond's group clashed with Margaret's followers outside the church. Shouts echoed in the streets, and a scuffle broke out, leaving broken windows and shattered faith. Police sirens blared as officers tried to intervene, but their efforts only deepened the animosity. Inside the church, Evelyn and Michael locked themselves in the basement, the machine humming ominously in the background. Evelyn pored over her mother's journal and the machine's symbols, desperate for a breakthrough. "This can't go on," she said, her voice edged with panic. "If this thing surges again, it could destroy the town, or worse." Michael, pacing anxiously, stopped in his tracks. "What does worse even mean, Evelyn? What is this thing trying to do?" Before Evelyn could answer, the machine flared to life. The core's light grew brighter, its hum rising to a deafening pitch. Symbols floated in the air, rearranging themselves into something unmistakable. A countdown. 10 o'clock, 9:59, 9:58. Evelyn's heart raced. "It's a failsafe, or a release. Whatever this thing is, it's reaching its endgame." Michael stared at the glowing countdown. "What happens when it reaches 0? Evelyn shook her head, terrified. "I don't know, but we can't wait to find out." The news of the countdown spread quickly, adding fuel to the already raging fire outside. Margaret's followers took it as a sign of the second coming, falling to their knees in prayer. Raymond's group saw it as a ticking bomb and prepared for a full-scale assault on the church. Evelyn and Michael realized they needed to act quickly to prevent bloodshed. Michael addressed the mob outside from the church steps, his voice strained but steady. "If we don't come together, this thing will destroy everything we've built here, whether it's divine or not." His words fell on deaf ears. Margaret and Raymond's followers shouted over him. Their distrust for one another mirrored in their disdain for Evelyn and Michael's partnership. The mob surged forward, and Michael barely managed to retreat into the church as fists pounded against the doors. Down in the basement, Evelyn ignored the chaos above, laser-focused on the machine's glowing core. The cryptic projection of her mother's face replayed in her mind. "It needs to be stopped," the image had said. But how? Then it hit her. The glowing symbols weren't just warnings. They were a sequence, a set of instructions. "Michael," she shouted, "these aren't just random symbols. They're guiding us to do something." Michael rushed down the stairs, his face pale. "We don't have time for puzzles, Evelyn. The town's about to tear itself apart." Evelyn grabbed his arm. "That's exactly why we need to finish this. Whatever this thing is, it's influencing everyone differently. It's feeding on our divisions, on our fears. If we can shut it down, maybe we can stop all of this." Michael hesitated, torn between his role as a spiritual leader and his growing trust in Evelyn. "What do you need me to do?" Evelyn pointed to the glowing core. "Pray if you want. Just help me figure out the last piece." Together, they deciphered the final sequence, their combined efforts creating an unlikely harmony. Evelyn's scientific reasoning complemented Michael's intuitive understanding of symbols rooted in ancient texts. As they worked, the countdown ticked closer to 0. Just as Evelyn entered the last sequence, the church doors burst open. Raymond's group stormed in, shouting and wielding tools. Behind them, Margaret's followers surged forward, trying to block their advance. The factions clashed in the sanctuary, their fighting shaking the walls of the church. Evelyn screamed over the chaos. "Stop! You'll trigger the machine!" But it was too late. The vibrations from the scuffle disrupted the machine's core. It flared violently, its energy spilling out in chaotic waves that sent people reeling. Michael shielded Evelyn as sparks flew from the walls. Evelyn scrambled to the console. "I need more time!" Michael turned to the crowd, his voice booming over the chaos. "If you want to save this town, put down your weapons and help us." His plea cut through the noise. Slowly, hesitantly, people began lowering their makeshift weapons and stepping back. Margaret and Raymond exchanged a tense look, but nodded. "What do you need?" Raymond asked. Michael pointed to the glowing core. "Hold it steady. Stop it from overloading." The townspeople formed a chain, working together to stabilize the machine while Evelyn completed the sequence. The countdown ticked down to its final seconds. 5, 4, 3. Evelyn slammed the last lever into place and the core dimmed. The symbols vanished and the machine let out a low, final hum before falling silent. The church was eerily quiet. The crowd stood in stunned silence, their breath visible in the now cold air. Margaret broke down in tears, her hands trembling. What was it? Was it a sign from God? Evelyn, exhausted, leaned against Michael. "I don't know. Maybe it was never meant for us to understand. But we stopped it. Together." Michael nodded, looking out at the bruised and battered townspeople. Maybe that's the real miracle. As the machine lay dormant, its mysteries unresolved, the town began to heal. People who had been divided found unity in their shared survival. Evelyn and Michael, though forever changed by the experience, became symbols of cooperation. Proof that faith and reason could coexist. In the end, the machine left behind more questions than answers. But as Evelyn looked at the glowing core one last time, she couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't finished with them yet.